There is a chance that the next game in the God of War series will be a return to Greek mythology, although likely not in the way you are expecting. So, let me explain why that's the case and share my theories on what this game could look like. Let's start by discussing where this new Greek title was first mentioned, as I'm not pulling this idea out of thin air. The potential existence of a new Greek game in the series was mentioned by reliable journalist and leaker Jeff Grubb, who heard from his sources that Sony is set to release a God of War side story set in Greece, and that it should be releasing this year. Tom Henderson, another well-known journalist and leaker, also mentioned a return to Greece, although he wasn't sure what form this title would take. Later, during Jeff's podcast, he cleared up the idea that this is not a remaster of the original Greek trilogy, which many people had speculated about. So, that points to a Miles Morales-style title starring Kratos in Greek mythology that should release this year. And yeah, obviously that leaves us with a ton of questions, as this certainly wasn't on my bingo card. We've done a lot of speculation about where the series could go next. I've always believed that if we got a spin-off to ease the wait for the next mainline game, it would feature a truce. But after thinking about this idea, I actually think it makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of potential hints about a return to Greece already hidden in the Norse saga. While you can play the Norse games without playing God of War 1 through 3, both stories include major moments that rely heavily on Kratos' Greek past. In God of War 2018, it's him recovering the Blades of Chaos while being haunted by a vision of Athena. In Ragnarok, it's his reconciliation with Freya, which happened in part because Kratos shared the loss of his daughter, Calliope. Both events make sense on their own, but they hit much harder if you know the full story. The surprise DLC Valhalla doubled down on these connections to the original trilogy. The story is largely about Kratos coming to terms with the person he used to be. While you get an idea of who he was through stories shared with Atreus and Mimir, unless you've played the older titles, you're missing out on a lot. Some of these stories are shared in the DLC, but you're basically getting a PowerPoint-style recap of the most important moments. There's still a lot more in those old games. You also get a taste of the old gameplay in Valhalla. It includes returning enemies from Greek mythology and even a returning weapon, the Blade of Olympus. Fun stat, 15.6% of players unlock the Dark Odyssey trophy, which is earned when you obtain the sword in the Valhalla DLC. Only 9% unlock the Gold of Hope trophy, which gives you the blade in New Game Plus. The numbers are higher than I expected. But considering that 43% of players reached the final boss of the main story, a major part of the player base hasn't seen or used this classic weapon. So, you'd think Sony Santa Monica is looking for a good reason to reuse these assets, especially since they released them in a free update. We even have the look and armor of the original Kratos in this new setting. So, many building blocks for a Greek title starring Kratos are already made. The big question is, what does Sony Santa Monica want to build with these blocks? Now we're getting into more speculative territory. This video is based on a rumor from reliable sources, but nothing has been confirmed yet. In the next part, I'll share my theories on what the game could be, which are, again, just theories. I'm definitely curious to hear yours too, so leave them in the comments. And if you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Before I get into what I think this Greek game could be, I want to rule something out. I don't believe this story will be a continuation of Ragnarok and Valhalla for a few reasons. For one, God of War has always focused on mythologies with a pantheon of gods. After God of War 3, there's basically no Greek pantheon left. Kratos also clearly states that he still has things he wants to do in the Norse realms. The ending of Valhalla reinforces the idea that his current goal is to work with Freya and others to restore the realms. So whatever pulls him away from that has to be something very urgent, and I think they're saving that for the next main game. Also, the most logical reason for Kratos to return to Greece would be to confront his past, something he already did in Valhalla. Another theory I have is based on Kratos' newest weapon, the Draupnir Spear. That weapon is rooted in Norse mythology, but Kratos mentions it's the first weapon a Spartan learns. Since we now have a full move set for that type of weapon, we might see Kratos as a soldier in the Spartan army even before becoming the Ghost of Sparta. I really like the idea of following Kratos as he becomes Ars's champion, ending with the tragedy of him killing his wife and daughter, but honestly, that might be unlikely. Both the Greek and Norse sagas are based on the power fantasy of playing a literal god. So, making Kratos less powerful might not be the direction they want. to take. What I think is more likely, especially considering the DLC assets, is a return to Kratos' past as the champion of Ars and later, the God of War. As Jeff Grubb mentioned, this is likely not a remaster of the original trilogy. While Sony does have a reputation for remakes, recreating 3 full games would be a huge task, and they want to move the series forward. So, what if we get a revised version of Kratos' original story, condensed into 1 game instead of 3? That makes a lot of sense. The goal would be to catch new players up on Kratos' past, and that's far less intimidating if it's just 1 game. You can go back and play the older games on PS5 now, but if you check howlongtobeat.com, it takes about 31 hours to finish just the main stories. That's a big time investment, but if they repackage the story into a 10-15 hour experience with modern gameplay, it's much more appealing. The older titles also have some content that probably wouldn't sit well in a modern game. So, doing a revised version makes it easier to skip or rework those parts while keeping the key elements of Kratos' character. And while game development is never simple, this would be a relatively easier project. The story, levels, enemies, and bosses already exist, and some of them are already in the new engine and style. The Blades of Chaos, though already important in the Norse saga, were Kratos' first iconic weapon. Centering the gameplay around them again, with expanded attacks and combos, sounds exciting. I remember Eric Williams, the director of Ragnarok, talking about doing a greatest hits for the Blades moveset, and I imagine some ideas didn't make it into the final game. So, they're definitely worth revisiting. And like I mentioned earlier, the Blade of Olympus, another major weapon, is already playable in the modern engine. Since it was central to God of War 2 and 3, I expect they'll expand the moveset and make it the second main weapon. Maybe we'll even get a short prologue showing Kratos as a Spartan soldier using the spear moveset before he becomes the God of War. Again, let me know your thoughts and theories in the comments. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and leave a like if you enjoyed this one. We also made a video on where the series could go next. Click on the screen to watch it, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.